everybody, it's Tripl-L, and now let's talk My Hero Academia chapter 148, The Sorrows of Young Toga Ice. Yeah, alright. Anyway, guys, this chapter, man, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun chapter, and it was also a chapter that you had to be very careful when reading, because if you missed even a small detail, you would have missed out on some pretty cool revelations or some pretty cool conclusions. Specifically, the part that gets a bit more confusing is the end, because you have to keep track of who is speaking, or not speaking but thinking. You have to keep track of who is thinking, you have to keep track of the thought bubbles and keeping it parallel to the actual speech bubbles. It gets pretty it can be kind of tricky if the characters don't give away some of their personal mannerisms while they're doing the thought bubble monologue. But overall, this chapter, I really enjoyed it, and the thing that really set it off for me, the thing that stands at the top for this chapter, something that I really enjoyed, was seeing Shigaraki's face. For fans of My Hero Academia, you know that a panel of Shigaraki's face is very important. The guy loves, or I'm sorry, when I say the guy, I mean the author loves showing off Shigaraki's looks. And every time it's disturbing in a different way, but this time, that face, it looks so pristine. It looked so calm. It looked so developed. You know, he seemed like he wasn't depraved anymore. It seems like he's thinking. And this is awesome, right? Because Shigaraki is meant to parallel Izuku in terms of development. They develop in kind of parallel ways, although, you know, Shigaraki is developing towards villain, Izuku is developing towards hero. But the thing is, like, they are ultimately both students to two great masters. Or at least two very powerful masters. They might not be great in terms of like their teaching ability, but they're powerful masters all the same. Now, when it comes to that face, this is really important. This is emotional maturity. This is something that Shigaraki needed. All for One was right. Him losing All for One was gonna spur him into greater things. And seeing that face, that's the epitome of it. And you know, when you consider Shigaraki's mental state in that little exchange with Toga and Twice, and then you consider last week's chapter about pawns and all that, you know, the more I see this, the more I am sure that Shisaki is screwed. Shisaki, like, crossed the worst possible person. Overhaul is gonna get overhauled. Him messing with Shigaraki was the worst possible thing he could have done. Him telling Shigaraki about using pawns, or taking your opponent's pawns and using them, was the worst thing he could have ever have done. Because when you look at Shigaraki's development, when you look at the rhetoric that Shigaraki uses in previous chapters, you will notice that the rhetoric of games, that the metaphor of games, is still continuing very strong with Shigaraki. Everything Shigaraki encounters is a learning experience. Shigaraki is gonna screw these people over, and it's gonna be great, man. Like, it's like, oh wow. Anyway, that's like a whole other topic, but let's go back to these guys. The most important thing with Shigaraki having this emotional maturity now is that he can incite emotions in other people. No longer is he going to be this man-child who's kind of hard to understand. No, he can now incite emotion with people because he's now presenting himself as a bit more relatable. Like, that face, the pristineness of that artwork should tell you this was a genuine, heartfelt thought. It's for his sake, and it's for the sake of them, of the two of them. And we see how him saying "I believe in you" made such a big effect on those two characters. For Twice especially, we know that this kind of thing would affect him because he wants to have a group to belong to. He wants to be a part of that. We've seen Twice's mental process on this. We know what he wants. So I can only imagine how nice of a thing that was for Twice. And you know, after the Shigaraki face, everything in the chapter just gets better. Everything ramps up because now we have a bit of complexity going on with the narrative, with how the information is getting passed over to the viewer, or sorry, to the reader, and then we have just the characters talking about how they feel. Twice having a, well, you know, justifiable regret over what happened to Magne makes sense, and it's cool to see that it hurts him, and it's cool his line about, hey, I'm a human too. That's cool. And you know, I kind of get like almost caught up in it. You know, I was like, oh man, yeah, it sucks that he feels bad that he lost his friend. But then I remind myself, Magne has murdered people. He's a bad guy. Any bad guy going down is a good thing. Do not get caught up in the emotion. These people are murderers. But Twice in particular, I think he's probably one of the more sympathetic characters. And so I do have a soft spot for Twice. I do feel for him. So for me, this chapter, seeing Twice also talking about how he feels guilty and seeing Toga being there and trying to support him and trying to help him keep his psychosis under control, it was nice. It was nice for Twice. I enjoyed seeing that. And the thing with the Shigaraki face and the Shigaraki talking is that, you know, this means that Shigaraki's ability at manipulating people is increasing. And, you know, to say it's manipulating is a bit unfair because that gives the connotation that he's doing it just for the sake of manipulation. But this is kind of like a factor of it. He is swaying them based on their emotions. He is swaying them by saying that, hey, I have faith in you. It is one of those techniques that can be used to manipulate people, make people feel like they are a part of something. Naturally, whether it's manipulation or just charisma will ultimately come down to the intention, in which case it's Shigaraki's developing charisma. It wouldn't really be manipulation, because I do think Shigaraki is, well, he's earnest, he's truthful about it, he's honest. Now, the thing that made that last little bit of the chapter a bit more confusing to follow if you weren't paying attention was because we spent a lot of it looking at Twice's perspective. For that whole second half of the chapter, you are premised that it's Twice who's having his dramatic moment. But once Toga gets involved, Toga takes the tempo from Twice. She's the one that fixes Twice. She's the one that has Twice saying those funny little lines like, hey Toga, let's go out, you're a devil. You know, Toga starts talking, and then this is where we kind of segue, or we kind of use what we saw in the flashback, because Toga was also a prominent part of the flashback. We now get Toga talking, and then she's the one who decides she's just going to do things her own way after dealing with Twice, and she starts saying things that would get the Yakuza pretty angry. Like, the straw that broke the camel's back for that conversation was when Toga said their failing boss, or their ailing boss who's bedridden or whatever, they're talking about the old man Yakuza. They're pretty much bringing disrespect upon the Yakuza, and at that point, the Yakuza that's in the wall, he gets mad, he gets angry. This is what Toga wants. She doesn't care. She just wants to go about this her own way. And from the monologue she's having at the end, we know that that was Toga, because she's talking about being turned down. The only character that has that kind of rhetoric is Toga. So she's talking about being turned down, and she's now saying like, hey, let's play nice, heroes, or play nice with me, heroes. I think it's because Toga's decided she ultimately wants to just bring down the Yakuza as well. She doesn't like them, so she's gonna break them, and that's why she plays a part in kind of goading on the Yakuza in the walls. She's getting him angry because she wants him to just start reacting so that the heroes can have an opportunity to deal with him faster. That's how I interpret that situation. Again, it's gonna be tough to see if that's actually what's going on until next week's chapter. Oh wait, sorry, there's no chapter next week until the next 2 weeks chapter. But I really enjoyed that, and it's pretty subtle on Toga too, because she's just talking. She's talking to Twice and also talking down to the Yakuza that she knows is listening in the walls. Overall, that segment of the chapter is pretty excellent. I really enjoyed it. Props. It was pretty cool. Now, there are other things in the chapter that are also very valuable. The next valuable thing is Sir Night-Eye being ripped as all heck. Sir Night-Eye gets involved in a fight with the clone of Rappa, and yeah, I would never have expected that. He has a 5 kilogram like stamping seal, so he can launch that. And you know, when I first saw how easy Rappa was just blown away by it, I was thinking like, is that how that would work? But then again, it's 5 kilograms, and it's 5 kilograms compressed into that small surface area. That makes sense. You know, it makes sense. That thing was pretty dense, so I will accept that. I think it's a bit. But then again, actually, thinking about it, the speed with which that seal was fired, just by Newton's basic equations, like mass times acceleration, the mass is horrendous, and then the acceleration, like, yeah, okay, you know what? That thing was packing a lot of force. That thing was packing a ton of force. Cool. But yeah, Night-Eye dodges away from Rappa, and it kind of grazes him. It happened all pretty quick. It happened pretty quickly. But if you saw Rappa's fist, you would have seen that some shirt was shredded. That was the indication. And then you see Sir Night-Eye's abs, and it's like, wow, okay, he's chiseled. That makes sense. He was All Might's sidekick, so it makes sense that he would have been inspired to some degree. That was cool. Seeing Sir Night-Eye, you know, when you have this character whose ability, it seems to be more non-combative, it's interesting to see how they supplement it with weaponry. So I was pretty happy about that. Pretty cool. And then the other little bit I want to talk about was what was happening at the beginning with Aizawa and Deku. Actually, no, before that, I just remembered when Rappa got blasted away, there was a funny little panel of Twice's face. I just thought that was hilarious. I love that. So okay, that was all I wanted to say about that. But back to Aizawa and Deku. Aizawa's talking at the beginning, and it's unfortunate. It's a bit of unfortunate because at the very beginning, he's saying that he did not think that the operation would result in casualties. That's an interesting thing for him to say, especially because what does that imply about his thoughts about this operation? Was he lulled into a false sense of security since assuming that the students were there, that safety would be more or less assured? Did he underestimate the Yakuza as an organization because he knows that the Yakuza are a business model that's failing? Did he assume all those factors going in that they would have been able to just get through the situation and just deal with it? Because we've seen that the Yakuza are putting up quite a fight. We see that Overhaul's way of recruiting people and his methodologies are pretty threatening. But then again, you have to consider, like, from the perspective of a hero who sees the Yakuza as a vestige of a foregone time, it's like, it makes sense that they would go in there. But now, as we see, that false sense of security has been his undoing, effectively. And now the idea that Shigaraki and the villains are in league with the Yakuza, it's something that no one really saw coming, and now it's pretty terrifying. Overall though, I like that Aizawa did acknowledge that he wasn't mindful of the potential dangers of the situation. I am happy that we saw that he was relying on his preconceived notions of this organization and preconceived notions of the capabilities of the heroes present, and how that got him into a false sense of security. That's pretty cool. It's cool when a character can acknowledge these kind of things. Now, another thing that was really important in that little segment was Deku making the connection. That seems like the same move and the same quirk. What the heck happened? This is really important because, one, first off, Deku's super competent. Thank God there's a character who can remember things that happened in previous arcs and can just think of it on the fly. I love that we have it happening. It doesn't need to take up that much space, but I love that it's happening in here in just one panel, or in, I guess, technically 3 panels. Deku comes to that realization. This is really important now because now we open up the possibility for seeing, was it Shiketsu? Is that the other school? I think it's Shiketsu. We open up the possibility of seeing those characters again, and now we have a situation where the heroes have to inform another school that one of their students may be dead. So that will be pretty interesting. And this would be interesting if they will keep it under wraps or if they will get it exposed into the media. Ideally, they shouldn't do it because the media will just eat the other school apart. Now, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. Overall, this chapter has a lot of cool things to talk about, so I really enjoyed it. Whenever a chapter can give you a lot to talk about, it's a good chapter. Guys, let me know what you thought down below of this chapter. Let me know if you liked it, and yeah, let's end it there. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Until next time, I hope you have a great day.